All right. We went from operational data, we're moving for the next hour or so on unlocking subscriber and customer data, which is, we've talked a little bit about that this morning. I think that's going to be a much more rich conversation, probably bring out a lot more questions too. So for the next half an hour, we're going to be hearing from John Sims. He's the president of SAP Mobile Services. He's talking about unlocking and monetizing mobile customer data. So please give a warm welcome to Mr. John Sims.
Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon. Glad to be here. We wanted to spend a few minutes talking about a new service that we introduced yesterday. So some of you might know SAP. We're a very large company. We do business on a global basis. We're focused on the enterprise market mostly from the company overall. I run a division within the company that's focused both on mobile operators and on the enterprises. So we kind of straddle the fence, so to speak, helping both of those communities come together. And this new service that we introduced yesterday is really targeted at doing just that joining those two sort of sides of the fence together, as it were. And it's focused around helping to monetize this data that's locked inside the networks with a view to improving the ability of enterprises to be able to understand consumer behavior. So that's really one of the fundamental things we're trying to do, but we're also trying to make the mobile experience more relevant for the consumer as well. Right? We know that a lot of the techniques that are used today are very broad brush and so on, so we're trying to improve things for the consumer's perspective as well. And at the same time, we're also trying to open up a new revenue stream for operators with data that largely is only used for internal purposes today, and this unlocks it to a completely new community that they previously hadn't touched. So just kind of by way of kind of setting the scene, we're looking at the mobile world and we're saying this the growth here is explosive. We see that this, the world is growing, and it's been accelerated and pushed forward by other things. So it's being pushed forward by social, for example. Recently Facebook said that 3/4 of their users, almost 3/4 of their users, were accessing Facebook from mobile devices, and 30% of their revenues are made up from mobile advertising revenues. So social is driving things in the mobile space as well. So we see all these things kind of coming together. We've got great networks, at least here in the US. Finally we're leading the world in terms of 4G and moving that forward. So we've got great networks, we've got fantastic devices. I mean, you forget, when you're in the mobile business and you're involved in that, you sort of forget the progress we've made. But, I mean, what is it, 7 years ago when we first saw the iPhone, and look at what that's done to revolutionize the availability of smartphones, the availability of tablets, and so on. So this is really all driving people towards living in a mobile lifestyle. And the big enterprises we talk to, the consumer products companies, marketing brand agencies, and so on, when we talk to them, they see this experience that consumers are really living in this mobile world, and that the mobile world is a world of now, right? If you don't engage the person in the moment, then you've missed the opportunity. People don't want to know something that you should have done now, a week later, or a month later, or whatever. They need to know at that point in time in order to get the most value out of it. And depending on the demographic group you look at, people are spending somewhere between 10 and 30% of their life on a mobile device. Right? It's a lot of time that's being spent. And so the large enterprises that are trying to reach consumers, they're trying to figure that out. And they spend a ton of money on advertising. But if you look at what they do with advertising, they spend, I think it's $500 billion on advertising. But they spend it across traditional paper advertising, online advertising. 2% goes to mobile. So almost nothing goes to mobile. Right? That's a big opportunity. And why does it go? Why does nothing go to mobile? Well, it's because they think they're in the dark. Right? They really don't feel like they understand the consumer behavior, and that's a need that we're looking to try and address with our service. So operators are smart people, so they've got all this basic data sitting inside their network. So why have operators not just filled this need? Why haven't they gone forward and done that? And I don't mean to say everybody's not doing something. There's clearly some operators who have made progress in this area, but generally speaking, when you look at the market on a global basis, operators are really not taking advantage of the kind of information that they've got and the insights that could be had from it. And part of that is because we're talking about a massive scale of data. Even a medium-sized operator in Europe, for example, produces 1 to 2 terabytes of this data a day. And if you extrapolate that up to some of the big operators in the US, we're talking about tens of terabytes of data a day. And then you look at accumulating that over a period of time to get insights about behavior patterns and how they might change by different days or different times of the month or different parts of the year and that kind of thing. It's an enormous amount of data. And so that's one of the things that kind of, and it's a huge cost and investment, right? If you want to put in a multi-tens of terabyte decision support system to get to this answer, then it costs a huge amount of investment. And that's a bit of a leap of faith financially or economically that a lot of the operators are either not able to take or not willing to take. And so that's part of it. And then you've got the two sides speaking to each other. So you've got these enterprises and you got the operators. And the operators, in selling to enterprises, generally speaking, they're calling on the CIO's organization. And they're talking about their conventional services, voice, devices, and maybe some data services, but not really a lot beyond that. And on the enterprise side, the people who are worried about consumer insights and consumer behavior patterns are not the IT people. They're the marketing line of business people. So when you put the marketing line of business people and the operator together in the same room, they kind of talk past each other. And they talk past each other because the operators don't speak their language, and as you'll see in a moment, the enterprises don't really speak the mobile language either. And then everybody has been cautious because of the privacy concern. And so that's been one of the things that's held back, depending on which country you're in. Concerns are more acute or less acute. But in general, there's a concern across the board about breaching privacy and that being top of mind for a lot of these operators. Now, when you go to the other side of the equation and you talk to these enterprises, they know that, as I was saying before, they know that mobile is now. Right? They know that the mobile paradigm is a paradigm that says you have to be in the moment. And yet they feel ill-prepared for that. So they use techniques that are, they'll use some techniques like they'll talk to their marketing brand agencies, and the marketing brand agencies will pay people to put a little app on their phone that monitors what they're doing. And they might pay, like we talked to one major agency, and in the US they pay 120,000 people to put that app on their phone. And from that 120,000 sample, they extrapolate to the whole US population. And I think you probably would agree that the people who agree to put an app on their phone probably aren't the typical consumer who's walking around in the street. So that's a kind of a distorted view, but it's the limited view that they have. And then you kind of look at, they want to become more relevant. They want to get more contextual with the interface that they have with the customer, whether it's for advertising or whether it's for an offer or a coupon or those kinds of things. I mean, they don't want to send me coupons for diapers. My years of worrying about diapers for my kids are long past, and so I wouldn't be particularly motivated by that. But that happens. I mean, I think we all know we get offers, we get ads in the mobile environment that have nothing to do with what our lifestyle patterns are. And then, as I said before, the enterprises don't speak mobile operator speak. I mean, I talked to one global enterprise. They went and sat down and had a meeting with an operator, and the operator wanted to talk about where the data came from and what GGSNs were, what LTE was, and blah, blah, blah. And it was like it went completely over their head. They don't know, and they frankly don't care. They want to get to the pertinent data. And that's one of the things we're trying to do to bridge that. The other thing that we heard from enterprises was there are just too many operators in the world, right? And if you talk to these global brands, and I gave some examples in the other room of some of our customers, but I mean, these are major global brands that you would all know, and they're doing business in 100 countries. If they have to talk to 600 or 700 operators across those countries, they just don't have a mechanism to do that, and they don't want to. They need that to be simplified for them, which is what we're trying to address with this service. I'm going to pause there for a moment, and I'm going to play you a video that is one of these marketing brand agencies talking about this issue and the perspective from their perspective and from the enterprise perspective, so you can kind of hear that particular view.
The proliferation of mobile devices has significantly changed our behavior and how we interact with the world around us. However, many organizations are still using traditional methods to monitor and measure consumer behavior, sharing of information, interactions with brands, and engagement with rich media content. While all along, mobile operators have had within their networks a remarkable empirical data source of consumer insights and market intelligence enabled by connected devices.
The way we communicate, live and engage with each other at work and in our personal lives has changed forever. And it will continue to change as more consumers get connected around the world through mobile devices, smartphones and the internet. All of these interactions create volumes and volumes of data, and for marketers, it's an exciting prospect that mobile networks are able to provide a new source of information that gives insight into consumer behavior. Knowing what times of the day people are using their device to send SMS messages and make calls, what sites they are at when making purchasing decisions, and which apps are most used, how far they travel to work, to shop, or attend an event, and how long do they stay there. The ability to combine large-scale mobile network intelligence with other data sources, such as store loyalty cards, will bring a new dimension to the traditional ways of generating insights, and ultimately benefiting our clients by enabling marketers to better plan and adapt marketing programs, CRM and advertising strategies to have greater relevancy and benefits for their customers.
SAP Consumer Insight 365, powered by SAP HANA, provides a suite of business applications, unifying data acquisition, processing, analytics, and graphical reporting into a single phenomenally fast in-memory platform for best-run businesses like yours.
So that gives you kind of an additional perspective of what the people who are either in the enterprise space or the companies that are advising the enterprises are feeling about this particular topic. Now, I would say that if you take somebody like Guy, who was in this video, you know, they'd love to go all the way to understanding what specific people are doing. And we have no interest in that in this service. This service is all about understanding consumer behavior at a demographic level, so at a more aggregated level, and providing that level of insight. And I think that's one of the things that we've been very careful about with our service. So in this service, it's a cloud-based service, first of all. So we take the data from the operators, we put it into our in-memory computing HANA platform. You heard that mentioned there. And that's important because HANA is in memory, and it's 12,000 times faster than conventional disk technology. So based on that, we can do more real-time analysis on very large data sets. And we'll show you some of that here in a minute. And so it's in the cloud, which means the operator doesn't have to invest in all this infrastructure. They give us the data, we do the heavy lifting around the data, and then we make it available to the enterprises on a subscription basis. And they can, and the enterprises or these agencies on a subscription basis, and they would get access then to aggregated consumer behavioral data. And there would be various levels of kind of subscriptions based on how much they're willing to spend and how specific they want to get in terms of additional drilling into data. So the service is, we have, my organization in SAP, we have relationships with almost 1,000 mobile operators around the world. for other services that we provide. And we're able to leverage those relationships to get operators to start to become part of this consumer insight program. And then we also make sure that we are leveraging the cloud. Now, you probably don't know this, but SAP is the largest cloud player from an applications perspective in the world. We have over 30 million subscribers in the cloud for our cloud-based services. The company often sort of looked at as being the big cloud player is Salesforce.com, and Salesforce has a fraction of that as their cloud business. And so we've really gone from the traditional on-premise approach to also embrace fully the cloud and get there. And this is another service that fits into that mode. And then, as I said, it's built on SAP HANA. And we can talk a little more about that if anyone has any questions about it. But it also is, on top of that, is built our deep analytics expertise. SAP is the largest analytics company in the world. And so we're able to leverage that know-how and that technology to be able to do the analysis, and not only the numbers analysis, but the visualization of some of that analysis as well. And then on top of that, we also can apply some predictive analytic techniques to be able to project from the data what might happen next, so that the engagement can be a lot more effective. And then finally, we've got a lot of these enterprises already as SAP customers. We have 238,000 customers in 130 countries across 25 different industries. So we've got the mind share of the enterprise, and because of the relationships my group has, we've got the mind share with a lot of operators, and we're trying to leverage both of those then with the technology in the middle to be able to bridge the gap. So I'm going to pause there, and because they don't trust me talking or doing anything with demos, Steve Garcia from our team, who heads up the development of this particular area, is going to join us, and he'll walk you through kind of a little video here of the demonstration. Steve?
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. So this is a demonstration that I recorded. It's a live demonstration 2 nights back. The worry that I had was connectivity as well as network issues, but this is also going off a live platform and a live system. So let's go ahead and begin. So we're going to log into the portal, and it's going to be the basic credentials to be able to authenticate. And this is a system that's going to take you to a landing page that will be able to allow you both the capability to have snap daily reports, the ability to go ahead and search based off location, the ability to go ahead and receive notifications if data sources are now available or if a report is now coming to you. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and take you straight to London, and I'm going to drill down specifically. The level of data that we're going to, you can dimension based off the age, by device, by operating system. You can also take it by call data, messages, as well as data, pure data, and then browse it down to clickstream data to be able to have a better understanding. But in this case, I want to take it to specific to females under its 26 and 30 age bracket. I also want to go ahead and say I want to look at a micro location, because at general speak, I want to understand the micro analysis of a location and the benefits that may be of the activity that's occurring, the motion activity or movement activity of demographics, and then we could be able to have a better understanding of what's going on, at what location, at what time, and for what purposes. We have social interest sites that people are looking at. We also have advertisement sites that people are going through and clicking on. So you know that there's a relevance, but you also saw that there is a level of insight based off of other search engines. We also are tying in the geospatial analytics with the heat map. And the heat map's going to grow in intensity as far as size, based off color, by usage, volume, interaction with their mobile device. And it could be messaging, it could be data, it could be calls. And we're going to be able to take it down to a lower level. Now, if I take a look, you see a higher intense usage pattern right around the cafe, but you also have Burberry close by. As people are coming into the airport, you're also seeing activity as they are entering the terminal or exiting the terminal, or as they are leaving the terminal. You have activity around the coffee shop where they may be interacting with people at the stop. that's going to lend it to demographic motion activity. So based off of that, during the time of day, did they go ahead and interact with their phone based off of heavier data usage, or are they doing it by request types? And if you look at it, throughout the day, you have different usage patterns. As you saw a moment ago, 26 to 35 at 5 a.m. at a higher app usage, where there's going to be a higher data usage based off the applications. They're checking their email, they're going through. Or you take a look at 7 o'clock, what I'm going to take you back to be able to look at data usage between the 56 to 75-year-olds who are looking specifically at applications during that time period and go to that later shopper. The uniqueness about this is this live demonstration was going off of 51 billion rows of data, and it was getting back response time in sub-second responses. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. So I said SAP HANA was fast. I mean, what Steve said is absolutely true. This was a 51 billion row database in the cloud, and we were getting back sub-second response, in fact, 0.2 seconds on some of those queries that you saw being run there. And that's the kind of analysis that needs to be done if we're going to be able to help these enterprises in this world that is the real-time world of mobile. So just in looking at the benefits, so from a mobile operator's perspective, we think this opens up new revenue opportunities for them. We think it also helps them, they can also consume this internally, so this will help them also with their own marketing efforts as well, and based on that, we think there's an opportunity for them to reduce churn even further than their own current efforts. From an enterprise's perspective, they get a lot better insight. They get a lot better insight into what demographic profiles are doing. They obviously want to improve their sales and their engagement with those customers, and they get greater loyalty. So if they can be doing things that are much more relevant to particular consumers, ultimately what they want are the bottom two, right? They want more revenue, and they want people to be sticky to their brand. That's what they're trying to drive. And from a consumer's perspective, I don't know about you, but I get frustrated when I get things on my mobile device that I have no interest in. So improving the context of the interaction that happens, we think will be a significant benefit to the consumer. And also the timeliness. If I've been at the Wimbledon tennis and then next week somebody offers me something related to tennis, I'm maybe less likely to buy than if they made that offer to me when I'm still at the event. And so those kinds of things we think are certainly much more possible when you can do this. And then the convenience factor, just being able to have this more accurate engagement with the customer, we think really benefits the consumer. So I'll stop there, and we'll do some questions, I guess, right? Okay, thank you.
For those who don't know about me, I'm Dan Meyer. I'm editor-in-chief of RCR Wireless News. And I'm going to come up and just do a few questions, a little Q&A with you. Maybe anybody in the audience has any questions at all for John on his presentation? Maybe start there. Yeah, go ahead. And maybe let us know who you are as well.
Jerome Storker with TNS. Thanks for the guide plug. Nice colleague. What's the lowest level of granularity the system is going to operate?
So we'll probably talk about it at some point here, but privacy is a big concern, right? So in our view, what we've done is, first of all, we've said the data we want to get is anonymized, and we can talk about that more. But then if somebody runs a query through the portal that Steve showed, if somebody runs a query that would return a population less than 50 people, then we don't return the query. So we've set that as a threshold and said we're not going to go below that. And that's absolutely in deference to what we understand with regard to perceptions of privacy.
From a geospatial perspective, how fine
It sort of depends on what's available, right? I mean, it depends on which country we're in, depends on what kind of devices exist, whether the users have allowed location information to be shared, and or if that's not the case, then what kind of network-based triangulation or other techniques might be available within the network. So it's going to be, in some cases, quite granular, and in other cases, it's going to be, fairly broad. It's going to be, cell arc kind of dimension. But what we do know is that over time, it's all moving in one direction of more accuracy. So, while it will be a mixed bag to start with, we believe ultimately that we will have the ability to drill down in very specific locations.
It seemed like from that live demo too, I mean, you guys can get very, very granular on that. I mean, it's from the Heathrow Airport, you guys were...
Well, in that particular case, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Get very deep stuff. All right. Any other questions, anybody else at this time? No? We can work on some more questions here with some time up here, so. If you have any questions, just put your hands up, we'll get to you there. Well, I guess maybe let's touch a little bit more on that privacy issue. I mean, I had some questions I wanted to kind of start out with initially, but then after seeing the demo, it definitely shows, I mean, the privacy concern is always out there, and obviously you guys are putting steps in place to take care of that. But it does seem like it only takes one bad experience or one slip up from somebody in the chain to kind of maybe set off a chain reaction of negative. I guess how is it in tackling and trying to make sure that doesn't become an issue? That privacy concerns need to be really taken seriously.
So, in creating our partnership agreements with the operators, we specify in there that we don't want any data that identifies an individual. Okay. And that's more than just saying we don't want the phone number. There's other data too. We don't want that. On like home location, not home location and home location register, but in home location, where the person's from. We do want some general information about that. But we want, for example, in the US, we'd want the first 2 digits of the zip code. Because we want kind of a general where are you from sort of indication, as opposed to, it's John and he lives on this street at that address. We don't want that information. But it's useful for some of these brands to know, hey, if this person's shopping in Oxford Street in London, they're actually from Birmingham or they're from Manchester, as opposed to, they live in the London area. So that kind of information would be useful. Another example would be in a city that has a lot of tourist traffic, getting a demographic in the feed that we get from the operator that just indicates yes or no, is this a native number or not? In other words, is a person from overseas? So that would be another demographic we'd be able to show up. Based on what we have in the service.
Gotcha. I mean, and do you see, I guess, that need for privacy changing over time? Because it does seem like people are becoming more open with what they are doing every second of the day, and don't really care if people know. I mean, do you see that as changing, and how do you evolve with that change? I mean, you don't want to push beyond what's acceptable, and you kind of almost be conservative. So how do you adjust to that changing moral dynamic, I guess?
So I think it's like you just said, be conservative at the beginning. Okay. I mean, so our advice as we're talking to these enterprises, these big brand companies, about how you should get started is be conservative at the beginning. Don't go for, even if you could do it and there was no breach of privacy, avoid the perception that there could have been a breach of privacy. So perception's a big issue at play here. You're also right that I think this will evolve over time. I think it will evolve for 2 reasons. One is, I don't know, my sons, they're in college, and I'm always surprised at what they post on Facebook. So for that generation, privacy seems to be less of an issue than it was for my generation. And so I think it's evolving because the generation is changing. But I think it will also evolve because as we are able to deploy services like this and people start to see some of the benefits that will come with it, then they'll get a little more comfortable. I think we'll still have an element of society that will exist and probably will never go away, where they just don't want anyone to have any data on anything that they have. And you got to respect that. But I do think this is a continuum. I think this is we're going to see change in this over time. But the important thing is start softly. Don't go too quickly, too early.
Gotcha. Okay. Any questions at all? Anyone else? Any questions yet? No? I'll keep asking them. All right, I got questions myself. So, well, during your presentation, you kind of mentioned at the end there, those who can benefit from this, different segments that can benefit from this. At this point, who have you seen who is actually benefiting from this in the real world? Like which segments are you seeing? I mean, operators, retailers. Who is taking the leading role and really using this information and benefiting from this information?
Well, I think that's the opportunity we saw. We didn't think anyone was really stepping up to this on the scale that was required. I mean, the point I made earlier about these enterprises don't want to deal with hundreds of operators. You know, they may have direct relationships with a Verizon or an AT&T because they're so large. But that's not the profile of most markets around the world, you know. Most markets around the world have 3, 5, 6, 7, or 10 operators depending on the country. And it's a much more split market. And so in those kind of situations, people want to have that simplified, that interface, and that's kind of where we saw the opportunity. So we do see a number of relatively small companies who are focusing on particular parts of the big data problem with operators, you know, but mostly that focus has been on revenue assurance or network optimization techniques to identify hotspots in the network and adjustments that should be made. And so that's all good. There are a few companies who are trying to do what we're trying to do with the service, but they're relatively small, they're very niche focused. We're trying to do this on a global scale. And we think that's going to be one of the things that these big enterprises are going to look for.
Gotcha, makes sense, okay. Any questions? No? No? I got more? Okay. There you go. Sure.
Follow up.
Yep.
How accessible is the data that you're bringing into your system, as it were, to each block of other data sources?
To what source?
Each block of other data sources.
Oh.
In other words, is it just a reporting engine fixed and mocked, or is it flexible?
Well, the reports that can be generated out of it, the aggregated reports that can be generated out of it, the enterprises can use in their systems to combine with CRM and other kinds of systems that they might have, absolutely. So we would see that happening. The raw data that's in the system never goes anywhere, right? So that's just one of the absolutes that we don't breach. But the aggregated and analytical data, that can then feed into other systems within some of these companies.
Okay, all right. Any questions out there? All right. Well, I think one thing I want to touch on maybe a bit too was you kind of, you brought up your HANA platform. What makes that unique and different? Because it seemed like a pretty powerful platform to use, but what makes it unique and different in the market, and what does it kind of bring that, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, that makes you guys unique in the market when it comes to getting this information?
Well, if you look at, I said earlier, if you look at the volume of data we're talking about, it's massive. And conventional disk technology struggles with that. And so we saw that in the market, and we also saw that mobile was forcing society to move towards a more real time. And when we say that, we don't just mean for the consumer, we mean for businesses. So for example, we took our whole, SAP invented sort of business software, if you like. And so our core ERP system, SAP Business Suite, we took that and moved it to run on this HANA platform. Now people say we did that because we don't like Oracle and we didn't want people to buy their database. May or may not be true, but it's not the reason. The reason was we knew that these businesses had to exist in this real-time society. They had to move towards it. And it's really to enable that. That's the strategy behind it. The rest of it's just fun and games between their CEO and our chairman. And so apart from that, it's a deadly serious thing. And we see businesses taking that HANA platform and doing it's not about doing exactly what you did before and doing it a little faster. It's about doing things you couldn't do before. So for example, we were working with and implemented with one mobile operator in the US who wanted to be able to connect to their retail stores. And they wanted to be able to get near real-time feedback on how their offers in the stores, different devices, this much off, that plan. They wanted to get that information back and be able to make decisions about which offers were working, which weren't, how should we tweak things, and so on. The reports that they were running conventionally to do that were taking weeks. We do that information for them in a matter of hours, small number of hours. And so they can, on almost a real-time basis, they can be tweaking these things out in their stores. And so that it's about doing things you couldn't do before. And that's really the power of what we have in the SAP HANA platform.
Gotcha. And there's some side benefit as well, because you can make Oracle upset a little bit too. So a side benefit. So anyway, any other questions, anyone at this point now? Like we're running almost out of time. I might have one more, maybe just one final question I think we have time for. It seemed like looking at your presentation, one of the things you seemed to kind of touch on it several times was there's a challenge in communications between different industry sectors. I mean, like you said, some people speak a certain language, other people don't speak that language, so there's that challenge there. I mean, I guess what's the difficulty and how do you guys kind of bridge those gaps and making sure people can actually talk and they're talking the same language? That seems like that's just like a basic, that if you can't get that part right, nothing else is even going to matter because you don't even know what people are talking about. So it seems like in itself a big enough challenge.
Well, so we have a sales organization that's completely focused on dealing with mobile operators. Right? They know the mobile operator business upside and down, and so they're able to engage in that dialogue. We also have a much larger sales force calling on all these enterprises around the world, right? 6,000 people. And those people are organized around selling into different industries, and then even within an industry, selling into different lines of business. So we have people we can say, okay, we're really interested in consumer products, marketing line of business. We have salespeople who are targeted there. And so we kind of do speak both languages, right? Yeah. And we're sort of acting as the bridge in the middle. Yeah,
that seems a pretty important aspect to make sure everybody's, again, like you said, on the same page when it comes to this.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to somebody from a consumer company after they had had a meeting with mobile operator, and to say the guy's head was spinning would have been an understatement. I mean, they just did not connect at all.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, all right. Get any final questions? I don't know, Tim, how we're doing on time? We got a few minutes still. One more question? Anyone else in the audience? All right, I'll take the final question then. Okay. Well, I guess I mean, bringing all this together to the endpoint, it seems like that, you know, with this amount of data that's being generated by carriers. I mean, I was talking to some carriers earlier today, and even they're like amazed at how much information they're gathering, and they're saying a year from now, it's unthinkable how much they're actually going to have. Right. I mean, I guess the challenge, it seems, is are you able to scale and be ready for that challenge? Because again, you know, looking at it today, it seems difficult. A year from now,
more difficult.
It seems, well, not even just more. It's 10 times more. I mean, yes. It just seems to be going so much quicker. I mean, so how do you look ahead and not be discouraged that perhaps you can't tackle this problem, or that the pieces aren't going to be there to be able to tackle this issue? Because it seems like this is just one of those things that there's just no end in sight for the amount of data that can be generated.
Well, if you look at the HANA technology, HANA technology is based on the principle of parallelism. Yeah. Right. So scale happens as a natural course. Yeah. And then what we do know is that the microprocessors in these computers are getting faster and faster, right? Sure. So we know we can go to parallel. We know each of the computers is going to be more powerful. The memory is going to become more deep. And so based on that, we think we are able to keep up with what we see this growth. But you're right, the growth is massive. I was talking this morning and saying, you know, last year, if you look at all the data that was consumed or shared or created, it's 2 zettabytes of data. And that's like 2 to the 21. I mean, 10 to the 21. And so that's a lot of data. Yeah. But in 2015, that's probably going to be 4 times that or 5 times that, right? So and we think we can. We think we can stay with that.
And be able to sift through all the information and get out the relevant information that people need for this. For this.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, and you know, the other thing to remember is, you know, because the mobile environment is about now, as I said, you don't need to keep necessarily a year's worth of raw data. You need to keep a much shorter period of time of raw data, and then for the rest, you keep some aggregated views of that data. So you can see trend patterns over time, but you don't necessarily need to keep all the raw data. So you can put the raw data that's older into a more persistent storage layer.
Okay.
Right? So we'd see kind of a 2-tier.
But you can adjust that as well, because I think some countries have different laws when it comes to how much information is kept. So you have to be able to scale that almost between borders.
No, absolutely. So. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Well, great. Well, any more final questions from anyone? I think we're good. Great. Well, John, thanks so much for your time.
Okay.
We definitely appreciate it. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.